Remember when media wanted you to revolve around their schedule? It told you where, how, when. Well, something happened along the way. We changed. Words like on demand, streaming, and interactive all became part of the new media landscape. Today's media isn't about us. It's about you. When you want it, how you want it, where you want it. So we figured it was time to carve out our own space. A space to connect with you. Giving you the shows and content you want from the hosts you love and love to hate. Laughs? Sure. Insight? Of course. Breaking news when it happens and going along on the stories that matter. Giving you something new. This is media for the new world. Your world. A platform for an ever busy, ever mobile, ever evolving audience like you. This is about something new. Something you've always wanted. Something Iowa has needed. And now it has. This is Iowa Everywhere.
All right. Does that fire you up? What's going on?
If I didn't have long sleeves on, I'd have goosebumps here. You'd be able to see them, Chris. Well done.
Welcome to Two Guys Named Chris. So last week was like our pilot. Would you call it that? You're a TV guy.
Yeah, pilot episode. It's like the first Seinfeld episode that kind of sucked. But you'll see it every now and then.
It really took until episode 3 when the library cop made his debut.
Officer Bookman?
Yeah, that's when you found out about Seinfeld's greatness. You're like, okay, we're on to something here. When Bookman made his, they're talking about a little kid in the corner with the pee-pees and the wee-wees. Welcome to the program. Really excited to do this. We've been not leaking. We've been releasing all of our shows for Iowa Everywhere all weekend long. Want to give these guys a shout out real quick before we dig right in. Sage and Bloom, Sage Rosenfels and Brent Bloom. One of your old colleagues, Kenny Mayne, is going to be on the show.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
It's funny. Kenny Mayne was the reason that I got my first big sports center back in like 2015. I was doing the 8 p.m. Eastern Time Sports Center, which was just on ESPN News, and I got a call from one of the bosses mid-show, and he's like, "Hey, you mind sticking around for the 11 o'clock Eastern Time Sports Center? Kenny's not showing up." It turned out Kenny lived then, I think he still does, in the Pacific Northwest, and he either didn't know he was supposed to be on the schedule that week or just didn't show. I don't know, but he wasn't there, and so they called me in to fill in for him all week
out of the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, I don't know how, but him and Sage are pretty good buddies. So he's going to be on with Bloom and Sage tomorrow. Jared and J-Bo, Jared Stansberry and Jordan Bohannon will be with you guys once a week. We're going to come in again on Thursday, same time, same place. And then John Miller and I will have you guys covered on Fridays. Ben Bruns and John Miller will have Cyclone and Hawkeye reaction shows on Sunday. So we're looking forward to all of that. I am excited to welcome Fareway on board to sponsor Two Guys Named Chris. Fareway's been a big supporter of mine and Cyclone Fanatic for a really long time, and they jumped at the opportunity to join up with us, Chris. So next time you're back, we'll have to go meat shopping together.
Nothing better than Fareway meats. I tell you, I live down here in South Florida. I mean, I'd kill for a place like Fairway. The grocery stores just aren't.
What do you got?
Fairway
like
quality.
The Piggly Wiggly? Like what do you?
Well, that's one of them. The main one is Stop and Shop and Publix.
Oh yeah, those Publix are everywhere.
Publix, people down here love Publix. I mean, they think Publix is the greatest store invented, but they've never been to a Fairway. You know, they've never been to the Midwest. They don't know what a real grocery store is like, what a real meat counter is like in a grocery store.
Yeah, the one thing I always notice when I like to travel to Florida. Y'all don't have the meat. The meat quality is not the same thing.
No, and it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah. All right. Well,
is this what we're going to talk about? We're just going to talk about meat the whole show.
Another show, another time. It's game week, baby. Real quick, good call for you. You had where are you at this? So you had Florida Atlantic and Charlotte. That game got out of hand. got out of
Yeah,
hand.
I think it would have been a good game. Charlotte's quarterback got hurt early on in the second quarter, and it was never the same. And it was, boy, I hope you didn't have the over. There were a lot of people playing the total in that game, which was about 58-59, depending on where you got it. And it ended up just under because it was a blowout in the end. And FAU kind of sat on the football, put some reserves in. Charlotte rested. Their quarterback got injured in the second quarter, came back in the third, looked okay, but then it was so out of hand, they kept him out. And so missed the over by a point or two. And a lot of people were disappointed. But I was happy to get out there week 0 and get on the call. And that since I called the game week 0, I'm not calling one this week. So I get to sit back and watch Iowa and Iowa State this week.
Good. I was just going to ask you where you're at this week. All right. Well, let's dig right in with game week. We'll start with the Hawks and the Clones. I want to talk about the Nebraska game. Scott Frost. I didn't know if he was going to make it back, to be honest with you, but we'll get to that. Michigan's got a quarterback situation that I think is fascinating. Let's start with Iowa and South Dakota State. We'll go chronologically, 11 o'clock on Saturday. We were just talking before we came on here, and this just feels to me, Chris, I think Iowa wins the game, but this isn't a team you want to dick around with in South Dakota State. It's a little bit like those Northern Iowa games, when they come to town, and like this is different than Iowa State.
Now, hang on a second. This is, you mean like Northern Iowa when they play Iowa State?
Well, you all had you had to block 2 field goals not that long ago.
That's true. That one year they did almost beat Iowa.
This just seems to me like, I don't know what the line is. There's no line yet, but
right.
The Ferentz, Iowa's offense, this seems like an under and play South Dakota State game to me. But again, I just think it'll be closer than we might expect. They're the second-ranked team in FCS. They're a really good program. This isn't one like Iowa State's opponent in Southeast Missouri State.
Right. I'm with you. And it's not just because South Dakota State's the second-ranked team in FCS. It's just the way Iowa has played these types of games with Petrus last year. Remember, they got off to the great start. They blew out Indiana, blew out Iowa State. And then they came home and they had Kent State and Colorado State. And they struggled in both those games. I mean, you look at the final score in the Kent State game, I think they won 30-7 or something like that. But it was 9-7 late in the first half. Iowa was really struggling offensively. And then the Colorado State game, I think Iowa was down midway through the third quarter. And that's just, you can't do that. This week, you got to see Spencer Petrus, first of all, upright. The offensive line has to step up, keep him clean, keep him out of his own head. And Petrus has to complete some deep balls with a couple of touchdowns. Now, I think going back to last season, and I know he didn't start every game at the end of the year, but he appeared in just about every game. But I think his last 6 games last season, including the bowl game, he had 1 touchdown pass and 7 interceptions. And you got to start off on the right foot here. You got to get that momentum going from the summer, keep that going into an actual game, because that's when you really find, even though it's South Dakota State, we'll find out, I think, a lot about Spencer Petrus in this game.
Well, I don't worry about Iowa's defense. Like, they're going to hold under 13, 14 points. Like, maybe even less. Like, I don't worry about that. Like, the reason I think it's going to be somewhat close is because of that Iowa offense. It's just, they're not going to go out there and, I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe this will be a deal like the Maryland game a year ago. But it seems to, there's a lot of these games that I can remember. You referenced a couple of them. There was the one year that they play like North Texas, and that was a really good game going in like to the fourth quarter. There was a year that they did the same with Ball State. I remember. It's just, this is one of Iowa tends to kind of just let these teams hang around, and then they beat them up in the fourth quarter. That's
the problem. That's the problem with the way, Kirk Ferentz goes about things. I mean, they can beat anybody. They can play with anybody for the most part. Now, they couldn't play with Michigan in the Big Ten championship game last year, but for the most part, they can play with anybody, but they can also allow anyone else to play with them because of the style of play. And that's I cannot see that in this game. I'm saying I don't want to see that in this game. I can see it, but I don't want to see it. I think this game is so important for this offense. I don't care if the defense gives up a couple of big plays. Like you said, I'm not worried about the defense. I think the defense is going to be fine. Offensively, have to get off to a good start this season and get Spencer Petras some confidence.
What do you, other than Petras, like what would be the other thing that you're kind of circling as an Iowa fan?
Offensive line.
Yeah, I figured.
It has. I mean, and it's kind of and they're kind of intertwined because the offensive line, if they perform like they did last season, which was not good, Spencer Petras is not going to be good. He's got to have a clean pocket. He can't be rattled. He can't have a collapsing pocket because he doesn't do well in those situations. And the running game is going to have to be a little bit better too. They had some decent games last year running the football, but I don't think it was up to snuff for an Iowa offensive line, for a Kirk Ferentz offensive line. So I think those are the two things. It's offensive line, it's Spencer Petras, and you just hope that the defense is everything it should be or somewhat close. And it sounds like special teams, you rarely worry about special teams with Iowa. And I'm not too worried about the receivers either. I know they lost a couple, but they've never had, outside of when they had DJK and Marvin McNutt, they've never had, great dynamic receivers. Get the ball to the tight end, get it out to the receivers, get off to a good start. Yeah, let's go.
Tight end. Kyle actually asked on our Facebook page, what about the health of Iowa's receivers? And I actually been really impressed with Amir Smith-Marset with my Vikings. Man,
yeah,
he looks like he didn't even look like the same. He was good at Iowa, but it just they kind of limit those receivers so much.
Right.
Like I never, however many years ago, would have predicted that he would look the way he's looking in an NFL training camp. Like he's really good. He's going to be their second or third guy.
And you got Iowa wide receivers. It's just, I could go on all day about. I think the only receiver that wasn't better at the next level, because there are some guys that you never thought would make a pro roster, and they did. They made, not stars, but made scout teams as wide receivers. George Kittle. I mean, he did not do a lot at Iowa. He really didn't. You look at his stats, didn't do a lot, then just goes to the NFL and explodes. So, but I'm really not that worried about the wide receivers this season.
Yeah, that's generally just not a position that makes or breaks Iowa.
No, and running back either. They're always, no matter who the running back is, you plug and play. You had the one year with Sean Green.
Yeah.
But,
we had the one year where they went like 6 deep because everybody kept getting hurt. Greenwood.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at that 2009 team that was probably the best Iowa team other than maybe 2002 in my lifetime. Adam Robinson, Brandon Wager. I mean, they weren't great backs, but they were serviceable because they were on a really good team.
We'll go more in depth on this game coming up on Thursday's show when we have a point spread and that stuff. Let's touch on Iowa State and Southeast Missouri State. So SEMO, the Warhawks, I learned. This is different. So I had a really good conversation with Todd Blythe last week. So Todd podcast for us with Brett Meyer at Cyclone Fanatic, and he actually was on Mark Farley's coaching staff for a couple of years at Northern Iowa, and I was talking to him, just picking his brain about how these FCS teams kind of approach these games, and like that Northern Iowa one. And I would say South Dakota State too. Like they actually have players, right? Like they have legitimate guys who could go out there and win these games. Like the thing about it is like they have 63 scholarships compared to 85. That gets tossed around a lot. But when you're playing the 63 scholarship team in week 1, they're all healthy. And their starters aren't bad in the Missouri Valley. Like that's a pretty good football league. This SEMO team is different. Iowa State will be a 20-plus point favorite in this one. Now, they have been against Northern Iowa, too. I totally understand that. But this, to me, and maybe I'll eat crow here, The Campbell staff has struggled in these early September games. Clearly, they've never beaten Iowa. They've struggled in these games against Northern Iowa in the past. I just have a feeling that this one's different, and I think it has more to do with the opponent than it does the Cyclones. But, like, a little bit with you, I mean, that's what I want. Like, I don't want at halftime to be wondering if Iowa State is going to win this football game on Saturday. That will tell me a lot. Are they ready to go?
Got to start strong for once, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, that Campbell's accomplished a lot of things, but he's never gotten off to a great start at Iowa State. And even in the September games that he's won, I mean, there have been some really hairy situations, like against Northern Iowa, 2 of the last 3 years.
Jumping on the ball.
Oh man, triple overtime. Yeah, I got a Campbell stat for you that you probably heard, but he's 8-13 in September. 8-13 in September.
It's incredible.
September is where you play your non-conference games. A lot of teams, a lot of not so good teams would be 12-4 or whatever in September because they don't play anybody. Now Iowa State always plays Iowa, so it's always different. But they just haven't, like you said about Iowa, sometimes struggling with lower competition. Iowa State always seems to struggle with lesser competition in September. Always. I mean, you go back to, the 2 nail biters against Northern Iowa the last 3 years, the loss against Louisiana. And I know that was a pretty good Louisiana team that ended up ranked at the end of the year, but still it's a home game and they flat out lost. It's not a game they should lose. I think this is the year they have to, if they don't beat Iowa, at least get off to a decent start. Got to win your first Big 12 game. I don't care who it's against.
It's a tough one. They got Baylor.
I know, but it's at home.
No, yeah, absolutely. And they've been really good at home in the league. So
yeah. I think that they absolutely have a chance to win that game and maybe should win that game. 4 of the first 6 games are at home. The other 2 road games are Iowa, which is in-state. I know it's a rivalry game and they won't be favored, but it's in-state. And Kansas. That's a win. So I think the schedule sets up nicely for Iowa State to get off to maybe the best start in September in the Campbell era.
This is the best schedule that they've had, I think. Maybe just the way it all sets up, because Ohio and SEMO are much easier games than they've had in those other 2 non-con.
Don't you wish, though, that they were playing somebody a little bit like, instead of Southeast Missouri State, maybe just flat out Missouri State? Like, even that would be a better game.
No. I'll take this.
Well, come on.
I don't know any of these guys. So, like, I want to see. I think that here's what I'm hearing coming out of camp. This is why I'll say this, okay? And this we're gonna debate and talk about a college football preseason coming up here in the show. So I'm giving them my points away a little bit, but like Iowa State's too deep. I mean, they've got like your Xavier Hutchinsons and your Orion Vances and the guys like that coming back who everybody knows. But their too deep is pretty inexperienced for the most part. I think that they've recruited better, but I really think, Chris, that like I would rather them play a team that I think that they can beat by 30 and get guys reps.
Okay. I understand that
because I don't know if they would do that against Missouri State. I don't know if they would do that against Missouri State. I've seen it too much. That'd be a 1 possession game going into the 4th quarter.
You're right. I mean, it might happen Drake could give him a game. We've seen it happen.
Thanks.
I'm okay with the first game of the season be let's just dip our toes in the water, treat it kind of like a preseason game. You're going to win it, get some guys some reps. But, when you look to that next game, which the next, lesser opponent game, not the Iowa game. I know you have that, but
yeah.
I think it would be nice to see the level of competition stepped up a little bit. And I guess it is a little with Ohio. Ohio is it's at least an FBS team. It's a max team.
Still there.
I feel like he may have just retired. I think they named the field after him or the stadium or something at Ohio. What a slap in the face to Nebraska.
He's the former head coach at Ohio. Last year was in 2020.
Yeah, I think they named the field or the stadium after him because he was there. He was there 20 years or so.
Yeah, he took that job, and I'm looking at it right now, 2005, and left in 2000. But a ton of bowl wins. Hell, they were winning 9 games like pretty consistently with Frank Solich. That's what he did at Nebraska.
Yeah,
they fired him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I want to see Hunter Deckers. We've seen Hunter Deckers in pieces, but not really. Never where it's like, hey, this is your team. I'm anxious to see the offensive line, though. That's the number one thing with these Campbell teams. I'll give you one little nugget is the SEMO actually has a really good running back.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a top 10 guy last year in FCS, and he potentially could be in an NFL camp down the road. And I am interested losing Inyi Wazarike and some of the beef up front defensive line wise. Just stopping the run would be, if you're like, hey, Chris, what's a concern for you about the defense this year? That's where they've been really good. And, they've got a pretty good defensive line, I think. Obviously, Will McDonald, he's not known to being a run stopper, though. So that'll be a nice little test for Iowa State as far as the defense goes. But clearly, one is the offensive line. 2, what does Hunter Deckers look like? How comfortable does he look like?
Yeah.
I think that they'll go out there. There's a little bit to me like they are playing with house money right now. There's not a lot of expectations compared to last year. You got a lot of young guys who have never played before. I just don't want them to look tight, I guess. Just go out there, play loose. And if they do, I think they'll win by 30 plus points.
Yeah, I think Iowa State's going to be better than advertised. We talked about that a little bit in our pilot episode. We like the over. I mean, the over under 6.5. I've been telling people at CBS Sports HQ, listen, got an insider there at Iowa State. He says best bet in college football is the Iowa State over, and he says they're not just winning 7, they're winning 8 or 9. No
pressure.
I do think this is a great spot for Iowa State with the way the schedule sets up. Even though they have to go to Iowa, the expectations are down, not like they were the last few years, and I think they're going to surprise some people. I really do.
So I did place a bet on Saturday after the Nebraska game. I went over and placed the over on the win total for Kansas State because of Adrian Martinez.
What? Oh, wait. So
I'll help you think through this.
Okay.
When I watched Casey Thompson look the exact same way that Adrian Martinez has for the last 4 years or 3 years or whatever, because do you remember when Adrian Martinez started his first game for Nebraska and we're all like, oh man, they got a guy.
Yes. But you know what? It was like in that game. It was like a micro in that game. It was like kind of a micro thing. It looked like they had found the guy again. I mean, you saw him in the first half. It's like, oh, Thompson, yeah. Now this guy is going to change things for Nebraska. No, and I see what you're saying. Kind of a product of the culture at Nebraska fell apart. Now that he's somewhere else, you think he's going to surge back up again, and Kansas State's going to have a good season.
I don't know if he has to do that. I don't know if he's going to surge because I think Scott Frost may have actually ruined the young man, unfortunately. But let me make a point to you because I watched what Thompson looked like on Saturday, and the Nebraska looked like the same team. Like they had a bunch of different guys. They looked like the exact same team the way that thing went down. Martinez was really banged up last year, probably more so than most people believe. And I think going to Kansas State, he's going to be asked to do like half of what he had to do at Nebraska. Remember Colin Klein, the old running back playing quarterback? He's their new offensive coordinator. They fired Courtney Messingham, formerly an Iowa State guy. Kleiman is a run. I think that they're going to use him really well. I think it'll look a lot like the old Kansas State games with Colin Klein, and that's how they want to play. They've got Deuce Vaughn back there. They're really good up front. They probably have the best combined offensive and defensive lines in the Big 12. And that was my biggest question in the Big 12 all offseason long, Chris, was what's the Adrian Martinez thing look like at Kansas State? Was he the problem or was Scott Frost the problem? Scott Frost was the problem. I was proving that on Saturday. So I went and placed the over.
What's that set at?
It depends. You can get it at 7.5. I got it at 6.5. I had to pay some juice. I think I got it like minus 150, but I'd rather do that because I think that they'll 7-5. That's all they have to do.
Might come down to the Iowa State game.
It's potential. That'll be a really big game. That will be a really, really, really big game this year for Iowa State. But yeah,
always is.
So Scott Frost, actually a little bit surprised that he even got back on the plane. Did you watch the press conference?
I listened to it. I heard bits and pieces of it on social media. Now, I didn't hear the whole thing, but I did hear him do the Scott Frost thing and throw somebody under the bus.
Blame everybody.
Yeah.
But yourself. This is what he's getting crushed for. Maddie Van Winkle is our producer. This was the onside kick that went awry for the Huskers.
More of the workload. Oh, and an onside kick. Northwestern is on it. At the 45, Scott Frost going for the mortal blow in this game, and now Northwestern has a short field.
I don't know about that. Bill Bush, right there, special teams coach. That may be something that is called if you get the look. Right, that's usually how that works, is if you get the look, you're going to dial it up. If not, then you go ahead and kick it away. A tremendous awareness. And when you're doing that to a running back, I don't know.
Really a bonehead coaching move. That lost them the game. I'll go on that lost them the game because that is the most mentally fragile football team in America the last 5 years since Frost became the head coach. And you could just see it go blew up after that.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, you're up by 11. You got all the momentum. It's the third quarter. You have more talent than Northwestern. You should be a better team than Northwestern. And then you do that, give them a short field. Everything changed. I mean, everything changed. Northwestern was like, oh, there it is. There's the Nebraska mistake we've been waiting for. We're going to capitalize on it. Nebraska never scored again. I mean, I can't believe it keeps happening. How can you not win one of these games? Seriously. Like, how can you lose all of these close games?
That's where, like, going into the season, I was kind of like high on Nebraska because I
still think they're going to go over the win. I still think they're going to start like 5-2.
I have people like, oh, Williams, you still think they're going to beat Oklahoma? Yeah, they might. I mean, I don't. They very well could.
It'll be a close game, and they'll have a chance to win it in the fourth.
You know, like, and that's why Matt Campbell and I have told this story to my Cyclone listeners a bunch, but back in the day, we used to literally fight about this. And this would be, if I'm right, this will be a bad omen for the Hawks this year. Okay. Cause like I'm a believer that turnovers and, you know, the close wins eventually evens out to some extent. The close wins probably less because I do think there's an aspect of, it's much less random, right? Like some teams fold in certain situations where others thrive. I get that. But like turnovers, right? Like to an extent, yeah, it's undisciplined, but like fumbles and recoveries and stuff like that, I think that things come to the mean. And that's where I was at with Nebraska this year. I'm like, these guys were all but fired a year ago. Like, this is a balls to the wall type season, favorable schedule. I think that even if they're 8-4, like, it may not be overly impressive based on who they're going to beat in those 8 games, but they're still going to be 8-4. It was kind of that type of a thing for me. So now, like, I'm in this situation, Chris. I'm with you. Like, I could totally see him at like 5-2 and stuff. But like, if it hasn't changed, like, what clearly based off of what we saw on Saturday, it hasn't changed. So maybe they won't. Maybe they are going to go 3-9 again. Do they look that schedule?
I can't see them not getting to bowl eligibility with that schedule. I really can't. Now, sure, I thought, like everybody else, I think that they would be able to handle Northwestern. They're double-digit favorites. against Northwestern. I thought they would win by 14-20. I'm an idiot because that's just not Nebraska. And I'm probably an idiot for thinking that they're going to become bowl eligible this year. They're going to get to 6, 7, 8 wins. But I know that they have talent on that team. And I feel like every one of these games is a flip of the coin. At some point, this thing's going to come up tails. And they're going to win one of these. And it might turn everything around.
I'm with you.
Maybe with this program, all it takes is one. With this particular, if they can show that they can turn things around, win a game, put this in the rearview mirror. I know that's going to be hard to do. I think this season opening loss is devastating because that's not just a loss. That's a loss in the division in the Big Ten, and that sets you back big time. And the way that it happened is going to be tough to come back from. But I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like at some point it's going to turn.
I felt like that one was super critical though, because now you've got this long flight back. You know the media over there, like that.
What are they going to do? The media's going to try to pick them up. Hey guys, go Big Red. It's all right. You know what? We were close. We'll turn this thing around. Just like basically me, what I'm saying about Nebraska. That's what the media says to them, right?
The great Tom Chattel wrote a column about the sellout streak being in jeopardy.
The fake sellout streak?
Your sellout streak that you so astutely highlighted on SportsCenter.
Man, I got killed by Nebraska fans for talking about that or the streak that doesn't exist. What is it again? Oh, because they allot a certain amount for the road team, and if the road team doesn't sell those tickets, they get them back, but they still consider those sold tickets because they gave them to the opponent. And so they don't necessarily have to sell all those.
And then you
call
have
it a sellout.
Boosters buying up like batches of tickets that are unsold just to keep their stupid streak alive. I'll give them credit, though. They had a hell of a showing in Ireland. I'm not surprised. I think Iowa State would too. But being from that side of the state, like it is an impressive fan base, and they are hot right now. They get North Dakota on Saturday. I'm a little surprised they're playing after traveling back from Ireland. I kind of figured I didn't even realize that they had a game, but yeah, they get North Dakota. So I guess it's considered a game on Saturday. Okay, let's move on to the Michigan quarterback situation. This is one of the most Jim Harbaugh things ever and I actually appreciate it. I appreciate Jim Harbaugh here, where they're going into the year and he's basically saying, yeah, we have two good quarterbacks. We don't know which one we're like. So we're going to start one in week 1, and then we're going to start another in week 2 with Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy. Michigan actually put out a press release on Saturday evening about this at 5 o'clock. I think Matt can pull it up onto the screen for us there if you're watching with us on the live stream. But Hassel, what do you think about this? Is this a boneheaded move, or I like it? At least they're just being upfront about it and they're not fabricating something.
I'm with you, and I like the transparency. And when you play Colorado State and Hawaii, you can do stuff like this, right? Yes. I mean, those are games they're going to be favored by 20 to 30 points in both of those games, so it's not going to matter who starts at quarterback. They could throw some. They could play Wildcat the whole game and win. Clearly, he likes both the quarterbacks. And the only thing that kind of surprised me is that he's doing it the way he's no matter how Cade McNamara plays against Colorado State, and you're going to still start JJ McCarthy in that game against Hawaii. That's a little bit surprising that he would put it out there that he's going to go all the way into that second game with the same plan, no matter what happens in game 1. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that both quarterbacks are going to play in game 1. I would think that they would split reps in that first game. I mean, I'm not reading this as it's just going to be one quarterback in game 1 and just one quarterback in game 2. I mean, I still think each quarterback is going to play in both games. So that's the only thing that surprised me, but I don't mind it. I really don't. The old saying that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. I don't necessarily buy that.
I hate that.
Especially this day and age with injuries and, teams can be successful with multiple quarterbacks.
You'd like to have 2 quarterbacks at Iowa, wouldn't you?
Yes. Instead of 0. Yes. At Iowa, it's instead of you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0. It's you just have 0. And you just have to go from there because it doesn't seem like usually it's the 3rd stringer that we want to see at Iowa. I think it'll be interesting if I can't remember which quarterback is starting which game, but if quarterback 1 against Colorado State goes out, lights up the world.
McNamara's starting the opener.
McNamara's starting the opener. It'd be interesting if he goes out there, lights up the world, and then maybe the other one does not. Maybe he comes in, throws a pick, but he's still going to get the start in game 2 no matter what because Jim Harbaugh just said it.
I like the idea, and again, I guess I kind of comprehended this a little bit differently than you did. I kind of felt like McNamara will get the majority of reps.
You think he's just going to play the whole game?
Well, that's kind of how I read it. Maybe, but we clearly had different views of the language.
So I guess maybe that's good for him. He left some of it up for interpretation.
Well, if that's the case, I don't hate it though because I like getting a quarterback into a rhythm, right, with the offense and seeing how that progresses. You're right. When you're playing Colorado State and Hawaii, it's not going to matter for Michigan. They're going to kill those teams. There's something about when the coaches are doing the like every other series thing. I don't.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that. I would not want to see that. And I. The problem with these games is if you say, we're going to put you in the second half, game's going to be totally out of reach by then. So, you might not be playing with a bunch of starters and you're not going to be playing in pressure rep situations. So I don't mind this if I'm a Michigan fan. You're going to get a chance to see both of them in games that you're going to win and then go from there. I mean, and I also, I like the transparency. You don't often see that from head coaches. It's good for fans and it's good for the media. I don't know if it's good for the team, but it's nice to kind of know what to expect going in.
They really don't have much of a schedule until they head to Iowa City.
Yeah, they should be unbeaten. 1st. Yeah.
They've got UConn, who's one of the worst teams in FBS.
It's a pathetic non-conference schedule. I mean, you look at those teams, you could argue UConn and Hawaii are 2 of the worst 10 teams in the country. Colorado State, probably one of the worst 30 teams in the country. That's a pathetic non-conference schedule. It really is.
I hate Hawaii, and here's why. Because I wanted to go to bed so badly on Saturday night. Like I was so tired. I had my kids by myself all weekend. Been trying to launch this company. We've been working a lot. You have been too. There's a lot of people behind the scenes here at Iowa everywhere. But I couldn't turn off college football because it's like, oh, there's a game on. I got to watch it. And
that was for me, I was excited because I had just gotten done calling my game. The Hawaii game came on right after my FAU Charlotte game was over. So I hurried home because I hadn't really gotten to watch college football all day other than a little bit of that Nebraska Northwestern game. But I was in game mode. So I got home and I was fired up. I wanted to see a good game. And oh my God, Vandy ended it early. So you could have gone to bed early. Now,
yeah, but it was still college football.
Yeah. And I was actually watching the UTEP North Texas game.
Yeah, you tipped me off on that. I saw your tweet, and I couldn't find it on TV, and then I pulled up the stadium app. So I owe you a thank you on that. That was a good game. That was fun.
The problem is when I said the game was a great game, then North Texas kind of took it and ran with it. They've got a quarterback who turns 29 next week, and he still has a year of eligibility left.
How many guys have played in their 30s in college football history, I wonder?
I don't know. Remember thinking Chris Winkie was –
yeah.
I mean, you thought he was 50. He was like, 26 or so when he played for Florida State?
Yeah. Jason White, I believe, won a Heisman at Oklahoma. He was an older guy, but he wasn't anywhere close to – it's like that old movie, Necessary Roughness, the old man.
Yeah, this Austin Ani is his name for North Texas. He'll be playing as a 30-year-old next season.
All right, some other topics coming up. I want to give another shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fareway Meat and Grocery. We are really excited. They're the first sponsor to buy into what we are doing here at Iowa Everywhere. We're really excited to present coming up later on. Now, not all of our shows are going to be live. A lot of you are watching live right now. We're going to ease into that. We are a brand new startup, so we're going to ease into that. But Hassel and I will be live every week. You've got Jared Stansberry, Jordan Bohannon, Sage Rosenfels, and Brent Bloom. And then John Miller and I will be Miller and I are going to do a lot of breaking news stuff, which I'm really looking forward to. So, like, if later today the Big Ten adds Oregon, Hassel will go live here on all these feeds, and we'll just start reacting and give you guys that. So
that's where I think you can really make a difference here on Iowa Everywhere is that ability to just go whenever you want, go when something big happens. Because, when you look at our friends, Keith and Andy over at KXNO, I mean, I love those guys. I listen to every one of their shows, but they come up at 1 Central weekdays. Yeah. That's it. They're 1 to 3 Central. That's the only time you hear them on the show.
We are, if we're on a golf course or whatever, we can pull up our phone and stream for 5 minutes and give you a take.
I'm glad I've already made Miller jealous with my helmets. Yeah, I've had these for a long time.
They do look good.
And they're real helmets.
I actually had a guy reach out to me last week, and this is welcome back to the Cyhawk media thing, where an Iowa State fan was upset with me because Miller was wearing an Iowa hat and I didn't have on an Iowa State hat. And he thought that the Cyclones were being misrepresented. And I was like, come on, guys, if I haven't proven my Cyclone allegiance by now,
I think it's my fault because every chance I get, I talk about what a huge just dyed-in-the-wool Hawkeye fan you were growing up. So you're not. A lot of
Iowa State fans were, and then they go to Iowa State, and things change. Look, baby, right here, Cyclones versus the world. Coffee mug says it all.
Yeah, well,
shout out to Fareway. Thank you for them. Okay, a couple of quick discussion points here.
Mm-hmm.
Do we like week 0? We had 2 very different vantage points of week 0. You were on the call. You were at a stadium. I was on my couch. I'll let you go first.
I do. Some people will say, like, why call it week 0? Why not call it week 1? Well, there's only a handful of teams that play week 0. Most teams are starting week 1. So week 0 is just kind of a soft launch, kind of like our pilot episode.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And I certainly liked calling a game, one of just 11 games last week. So I think more people were probably, betting on that game than normally would be betting on a Conference USA matchup. So I think it gets some of these lesser conferences a little bit more love. You care a lot more about a Nebraska Northwestern matchup than you would if it was week 1 or week 10.
No, yeah.
So I like it. I do. But there were so many hiccups in the game that I was a part of. It just felt like it felt like some people just weren't ready. Whether it was in the stadium running the scoreboard or the clocks or the officials in their first game, the team, there were so many penalties and really odd coaching decisions. And it made me think, like, would it be smart to just play one exhibition game, even if it's against like just some really small directional school, just to kind of get your feet wet a little bit before you play in a real game? And I'm talking for everybody: players, coaches, officials, clock operators, broadcasters. In the NFL, you get 3, and I know it's not what people want it to be. It's not what it used to be because it's not a real game. But would it help to hit the ground running when it happens, to have just an exhibition game against a team that you might not normally play? Maybe it's, Iowa State plays Drake again. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you could convince me to do it if it's like how college basketball does it, where it's behind closed doors. And it's kind of like the NFL, right? Where the Vikings and the 49ers played last week, but they had like 3 days of scrimmaging and stuff leading up to it. I don't think I want to get rid of that opening week feel where the game actually matters. Like,
do you think that you would lose that feeling for the opening game if you had an exhibition game just to kind of, I mean, it's really not that much different from a spring game.
Yeah.
Fans don't have to be there.
Yeah, no, I don't want the fans there because
fans don't have to be there.
You could get me on board if this, like how college basketball does it. A lot of our audience may not even know this. Like, so Iowa State and Iowa, like Iowa will play like Creighton in a real scrimmage with real officials and real clock operators and all that stuff in Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Yeah, and you have no idea until like Matt Norlander tweets about it.
Right. I think I could get on board for that. The one thing that why this will never happen is, especially now with an expanded playoff coming.
Oh, I know it'll never happen.
Yeah, they'll say like football's different than basketball because of the hitting, right?
Yeah, we can't put these student athletes out there one more time for no reason.
We can't extend
the only way that it would happen is if they can go and say, you know what, that's one more game for your broadcast outlet or your streaming service to offer.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where one thing college football never does is passes up on additional revenue, right? Like,
no,
they will never.
You can say that about pretty much any sport.
I do think it would take away from week one, but only if the fans
week
are there.
0 take away from week one.
So to me, no, and this is where I have a different vantage point. Like, so I have a few things I would do differently. Like college football is a product. Like the Nebraska Northwestern kickoff was great. And then you just had a bunch of, I mean, no offense, but fillers, right? Like not marquee type of games. I think it'd be great if, Fox had a big game, ESPN had a big game, CBS had a big game, right? Where and kind of have it be like that. Because I loved it, but I'm a geek, like I'm an absolute college football junkie. So to me, like I was watching Florida Atlantic and Charlotte I was paying attention, right? So I never know where those teams might be in November, and I want to be able to, put 2 and 2 together. I watched Florida State. I'm really interested in Florida State. They get LSU next week. I was pretty interested in the Illinois game because I think Illinois. They're one of my overplays as far as the win total. I think they could be a problem for Iowa down the stretch, right? I think that's a team that in the West might be a bit of a sleeper. So it was nice, but I almost feel like we were just talking about Michigan's schedule, right? Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn. Isn't that a preseason? Couldn't we make the argument that most of these teams are already doing this? If you look at the week one schedule, aren't they already treating this like that?
Yes. I totally get it, and I agree with that. I think there are a lot of teams who start with a preseason game, but not everybody does it. Not everybody starts with SEMO or South Dakota State. I mean, you've got huge matchups in week one.
Yeah, Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Yeah, and that might end up not even being one of the best matchups, just because Ohio State's like a 3-score favorite. I mean, Ohio State's so good, and Notre Dame, I think, is overrated at 5. But point is, there are teams that start with a really, really good game, a really good matchup, and some teams just aren't ready for it in week one. I mean, I was so scared last year when Iowa had to start with a top 25 game against Indiana because you just don't know how they're going to start. You don't know how teams are going to come out. You don't know if they're going to be ready. And I'm not saying I want to see an exhibition game to start the year. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, no,
would that put everybody in a better spot? Because it was very, very, my game anyway. Everybody was rusty. It's kind of what you would expect in week 0. And had there been some kind of exhibition warm up for the officials and whatnot, maybe it would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, I like the basketball model a lot. I could totally get on board with that. Like, I mean, you look at like our programs, like bring Grandview over. It's a really good program, right?
Yeah.
Now you would have to pay them, That would be the thing, because like if I'm Drake or Grandview, like I don't know if I want to risk injuries and stuff
Sure.
like that in a scenario like we're describing, but it could be a revenue boost for them. I would get on board for that. All right. Two guys named Chris here on Iowa Everywhere. We do have a couple of people who are asking us. We are live on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. We will be live on YouTube. We're not yet. Google is very difficult to work with. If you're wanting this on Google Podcasts too, we will be on Google Podcasts. They take a while to like approve pages and stuff like that. I had a bunch of people tweeting at us over the weekend. We're on all the podcast platforms except right now Google and iHeart, I believe, because they take longer to approve these things, but we should be everywhere else. We want to just make this on demand. So if you want to watch it live, you can watch it live. Matt Van Winkle.
What would you say is the easiest platform to watch it live on? Is Twitter the easiest one to watch it live on?
I think it depends on probably YouTube, honestly, once that's up.
Okay.
Because they're kind of made for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's the whole point of YouTube. But I think it kind of depends on who you are and what you like. Probably Facebook, because you can just have it up in the background, or Facebook or Twitter. I think it's kind of indifferent. But we want to be everywhere, hence the name. So yes, we'll have this up. If maybe you joined us halfway in, you wanted to listen to the first part of the conversation, we will have these up on the Iowa Everywhere podcast page. So all of our shows, even though they're not going to be live yet, they will be in video form on our YouTube page. We'll post the so you can go back. And cool thing about that, Chris, is if somebody wants to put it up on their smart TV at night, you can watch it like a TV show. And we have Matt Van Winkle. Hey, Matt, pop on in and wave at everybody. Matt's producing for us.
Oh, that was quick.
What's up?
Yeah. Matt's going to be during the season here having video to go with this. So it'll actually add to your viewing. Like we'll have highlights and stuff like you did with the Nebraska game. So that'll be a really cool thing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this too is when we go live, it'll go out live to every person who's onto their Twitter page as well. But yeah, YouTube's probably the best place to find all of our shows, and then the podcast page as well.
Great
stuff. Thanks for that.
I feel like there's already a budding rivalry within Iowa Everywhere, though. I mean, I was in the middle of calling a game, and you get this group text from John Miller, and he wants to bet about who's going to have the most downloads, who's going to have the most listens, views.
Yeah, Miller was pretty antsy over the week. He was pretty upset. He thought that the caricature of him was he thought it misrepresented him. It looks like Tommy Lee Jones, like on drugs.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. But look, it's a caricature. You can't complain about a caricature. No. It's supposed to be a little bit exaggerated and funny, right?
So Kyle Starcevich, he's a former just stud at Southeast Polk back. I'm sure
I covered him at Southeast Polk when he was
the
quarterback there. Yeah.
And he played for Iowa State, and he's our artist. And he actually texted me that Sage was one of the hardest people he's ever had to draw. There's if you're watching right now, there's the caricature of John Miller. Again, I think it's Tommy Lee Jones on Vicodin. Eyes popping out of his head. Well, but
you
Kyle
look pretty good. Your caricature looks pretty good. They've got you in the non-shaved head mode.
Yeah, I'm growing my hair back. We'll have my hair back here before too long. But anyways, shout out to Kyle Starcevich for doing those. Last thing is, I'm interested. Do you play fantasy football?
I do. Yeah.
So it's draft week. Apparently, I haven't played fantasy. I got kicked out of our Cyclone Radio Network league.
What?
Like 5 years ago. Yeah, they kicked me.
Were you not setting your lineups or something?
No, I did all of it. I don't know why they ran me out of the lineup. They ran me out of the league.
Okay.
They had like a new person come on staff, and they eliminated me. So maybe I talked too much smack. I was very into the league, and I haven't gone back because now I just gamble so much. Where that's the fill for me. I'd rather bet on the games. But a lot of people are still into this. It's draft week. Do you have any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you go to cbssports.com, go to our fantasy page. We have the best fantasy experts with all kinds of great advice. There's all kinds of great things you can print off to help you. Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard, Heath Cummings, those guys, Adam Azer, they do fantasy football all day, every day, all year round. That's all they care about. That's all they do. And they're all there to help set you up to win.
Sweet.
And I get to work with those guys on a daily basis, and they, it's really a job for them. I mean, they treat it as a job. It's not just because they love it, but I think that I've got my first fantasy draft tonight, and then I have another one next week. What I just don't understand is these guys that will have they'll have like 5 teams.
I can't handle it.
Like 2 is a lot. The 2 is my ceiling. I cannot go more than 2 teams, because then you end up, you've got guys on your team for one league that you're playing against in another league, and then like, what do you do? What do you root for? What are you doing? Like, that's the fun in it, is you're rooting for your guys. You're rooting against the other guys. How is that entertaining, and how do you have a rooting interest if there's just all that crossover?
I'm just too big of a Vikings fan. Honestly, like, it was hard for me.
It changes things. It really does. And I've heard that from a lot of people that they've kind of pulled back a little bit on fantasy football because they found themselves rooting for themselves over their team in certain
I hate it. Yeah. Now, I do think that now that I'm not doing daily radio and the demands of that, because honestly, since I started doing that, Chris, like my Sundays, I didn't really watch the NFL because I was watching college games DVR'd from the day before.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do that daily thing, 3 hours a day in a market like this, you have to watch all those games. So I wasn't watching NFL other than the Vikings, basically, and sometimes the Chiefs. And I think that I'm probably going to, in addition to betting, the daily fantasy, I think, will be kind of
that has gotten each year. I think that becomes more and more accessible.
Do you guys cover that? Like, do you do some of those?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I need to keep in touch on those then, because I think that might be my jam.
I feel like that's more in depth than just season long fantasy. I mean, you're putting even more on your plate if you're doing daily fantasy.
Really?
I mean, I guess you can come in and out. Like you could do a daily fantasy one week and then not do anything for a month.
Here's my problem. And this is why the fantasy thing, like, because I'll get into leagues with guys, and I got kids, right? Like, it's Sundays, it's the Sabbath. Let's be honest. I'm not watching every play on Sunday Ticket. So then, like, when a guy gets hurt, I never have a chance to get the waiver wire.
What do you mean?
Because the guys I'm with in my leagues are so locked into it. Like, they'll hop
but you have until Tuesday to do that. It's not like you can't if you're in a league where if somebody gets injured and you can just go nab the backup on Sunday during play, you're in the wrong league.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So we need
it's got to be, everybody's got to have a chance to reset following Monday night's game and make waiver wire claims. And then the team, the worst, if you're in last place, you have the first claim. So
I'm in the wrong league.
Chance. Yeah. I mean, you guys had your rules all jacked up. I mean, that's Bush League. That's Bush Fantasy League.
I need to get in like a real league.
Yes, you need a real league. I don't know what did you say was Cyclone Fanatic League?
No, it's the Cyclone Radio Network, Learfield. They kicked me out.
Okay. So Bloom and those guys.
Yeah,
Bloom doesn't have a clue. He's got no clue. If it's not NBA fantasy, he has no clue.
I am doing for the first time a Survivor.
I've never done that. People swear by it.
You want in? I can get you in.
Probably.
My buddy Kyle put together one. It's for the NFL, and he does a college one too.
Oh, college. That's interesting.
I'll send you the details.
Now, I probably can't do college because I call games, but I might be able to do the NFL.
Look at you. God bless you.
Yeah, you got to follow the rules.
Ethics, baby. All right, that'll do it for the opening round of two.
By the way, did you notice the Cooter Ray bobblehead?
No, I didn't. I didn't notice that. That's amazing. Who made that for you?
Guy's name is Brian
Guys,
I believe. Yeah. Made
Yep.
this in 2011.
That's amazing.
It's got the piss stained overalls. He pissed himself. He's got the He's got the cigarette. So he's got a cigarette and he has chew in his mouth. That's
Just
the real
imagine-
Nebraskan right there.
Imagine the fun you could have had this week if you were still on sound off.
Oh my God. Yeah, I got a lot of texts.
Cooter Ray does Ireland.
I got a lot of tweets asking how Cooter Ray was doing.
Seriously, that's a great bit. Cooter Ray like touring the pubs in Ireland.
Oh my
in
God.
Dublin. How amazing that could have been.
This actually, when I moved to Connecticut for my ESPN job, this actually broke in transit, and we had to send it back to Brian to put it back together. So it's
a real treasure.
This is top notch right here. I mean, he did not spare any details. He's got, so you see, there's spit juice on the cup. You see that?
Yeah, I do.
Spit juice on the outside of the cup. Piss there at untied shoes. Yeah, he's spared no detail.
Oh, it's fantastic. All right. Well, we'll see you on Thursday. Two Guys Named Chris will be back Thursday morning, same time, same place. Follow, like, subscribe, review on our podcast page. We will have a website up, I believe, tomorrow, but I'm not going to make any promises. It'll be early this week where people can go to iowaeverywhere.com and just find all of our shows in one spot if you're into streaming and whatnot that way.
Hey, congratulations on launching Iowa Everywhere. I know it's been something that that you've worked really, really hard on and you're really passionate about. And thanks to Fareway for joining as the presenting sponsor as well.
Well, thank you, man. I wouldn't be here without
I can't wait to do this, especially once the season gets going. It's going to be a lot of fun Mondays and Thursdays.
Matty Van Winkle is going to be our producer here on Two Guys Named Chris. We appreciate him, best in the business. And stay tuned tomorrow on the podcast page and on YouTube. It'll be Sage Rosenfels and Brent Bloom. We've got Jared Stansbury and Jordan Bohannon, John Miller and I, and then we will have also a lot of people have been asking about my locks of the week from KXNO. I've been doing that for like 8 years now. They will be here on Iowa Everywhere. So I will be doing that here and looking forward to week one. Is the worst. It is impossible to gamble, but we're going to give it a shot. I don't care about my record. We want to have fun and hope you guys, it can add to your enjoyment of the game. So with that, for Chris Hassel, I am Chris Williams signing off. We'll be back on Thursday. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate Fareway for being our presenting sponsor.